no TEPCO employees doing that kind of dangerous work. It's not even the subcontractors who are doing this kind of work. It's the subcontractors. There's a level of about 8, 9, maybe 10 layers, and it's the people at the very bottom who are actually doing the work. And it is said that so many commissions are taken from their salaries that they're not even receiving minimum wage. I think you will all recall the terrible situation in Chernobyl in 1986 when they had their nuclear power plant accident. It has been said that anywhere from 600,000 to 800,000 people were called upon to try to deal with that situation. The 600,000 to 800,000 people included actual military personnel, also retired veterans, just general workers, and also it is said some convicts were recruited to take care of this situation. In Japan, would we be able to find that many people to deal with the situation? I do not think that is a possibility at all. In fact, as it is, we're already seeing a large number of foreign workers working at Fukushima. As you know, Japan is now led by the administration, which is composed of the members of the ruling party, the LDP, and also the Prime Minister is Mr. Abe, a man who has very clearly set out as his main priority economic recovery, economic expansion. As a result, he has worked very hard to bring the Olympics to Japan. In order to make the Olympic Games successful, he gave a speech on the international stage where he declared that the Fukushima accident was under control. However, that is not the situation at all. On a daily basis, there are workers on the site who are struggling to somehow deal with the situation, and every day they are being irradiated. And this struggle, this daily struggle of the workers there will continue for years to come, for decades to come. I've been explaining how much the workers on site have been struggling in spite of the irradiation they receive to try to contain the radioactive materials and try to keep the radioactive materials from being introduced into the environment. Having said this, in spite of their great efforts, there has unfortunately already been a great deal of radioactive materials that have been introduced into the environment. Even as we sit here talking today, every single moment, people in this area, centered primarily around the Fukushima prefecture area, are receiving radiation. And this being irradiated, being exposed to radiation situation will continue for years to come, for decades to come, possibly for centuries to come. Real shot of the Fukushima plant.
2号機、3号機、4号機が北から南に並んでいます。その本当にがれました。
So this is an aerial shot. You can see units number 1 to 4 on the southern part of the slide, and then up above you have number 5 and number 6. Reactors number 5 and 6 don't come into the news very much. They were very fortunate because one emergency generator managed to operate that day, and so there was no meltdown of the core. However, as you can see, reactors number 1 to 4 have had all of these different problems, and they are a great deal of radioactive materials were therefore emitted into the air. And not only this, as I mentioned earlier, they constantly have to be kept cool. As a result, contaminated water is being produced in great amounts each day, and they are being put into, as you can see in that little square, these tanks. It was TEPCO's idea to somehow contain this water into these tanks. Already 500,000 tons of contaminated water are in these tanks. Although TEPCO is working hard to build tank after tank after tank, there is a limit to how much physical space there is available on this site for building of tanks. So I think in the not too distant future, TEPCO will have to make a decision and say that it will start releasing some of the contaminated water into the ocean. So I should also point out that although they are making these tanks are not really permanent solid tanks, but rather sort of provisional temporary tanks. The reason is that if one were to try to build more sturdy, solid, permanent tanks, it means that during that process, the workers would be irradiated even more. There would be too much exposure to radiation, so they have to just simply manage with these tanks that are available. However, that means that because they were not designed for such long usage, we're seeing all sorts of leaks occur from time to time. And in addition to this, as you can see from the photograph, the reactor buildings, the turbine housing building also was damaged, and as a result, there's a great deal of water that goes through these facilities, and contaminated water, therefore, is leaking throughout the entire facility. In fact, we can look at all of Fukushima number 1 power plant, the whole facility, and say it's like a very highly contaminated swamp.
いうことで。
So, as you can see from this slide, I mentioned that this whole entire facility was like a swamp, a contaminated swamp. TEPCO last year did some research. They took water samples from wells that were in the facility. And from one of the wells, they were able to get this kind of data. This was in October of last year. Cesium-134, 61,000 becquerels per liter, which is a huge number, record high. And then cesium-137, 190,000 becquerels per liter. And of all of the what we call the beta emissions, 77.8 million becquerels per liter. So
6万1000ベク
showing you in red.
井戸水にありました。
What I'm showing you in red are the actual legally accepted emissions set by Japanese law. And as you can see, it's for cesium-134, it's only 60 becquerels per liter, which means that it's over 1,000 times the allowed limit. So again, with cesium-137, the allowed limit is only 90 becquerels per liter, but it's 190,000 as becquerels per liter that were discovered in this well. So that's over 2,000 times the legal limit of emissions allowed into the environment. And in regard to this terminology, total beta, I believe what they are referring to basically is the strontium-90 radioactive material, and the allowable limit is only 30 becquerels, and you can see it's 7.8 million that was discovered in this well. So it shows you that it's several tens of thousands of times the allowable limit that you are seeing on the site from a well. So again, we are in a very terrible situation. I would even call it a crisis situation. In order to ensure that the crisis does not get worse, the workers on site are working every single day and will continue to work every single day for the foreseeable future, even as they are exposed to further radiation. Although what I've been describing is quite grave, we have an even more serious issue facing us, which is the reactor cores have melted in units 1 to 3. What are we going to do about that? TEPCO and the Japanese government have recognized the problem, and they have said that, and they have put together a plan where they intend, in theory, to somehow pluck the melted fuel from the reactor cores and move them to a safer place where they will be stored and maintained. Apologize for this slide being in Japanese. It's actually a slide that was presented by TEPCO. It presents their plan as to how they will pluck out the melted fuel.
炉心は原子炉圧力
As was just explained right here, as he pointed out, on the left-hand diagram, in the very center you have the pressure vessel, and surrounding the pressure vessel in the center you have the containment vessel. And what TEPCO is saying is that inside the pressure vessel, which is that smaller part at the top, in the middle of the diagram, you have at the bottom the melted fuel, and they believe that the melted fuel has gone through the bottom of the pressure vessel and gone all the way down to the floor of the containment vessel, and it's sitting there sort of like in a big lump. So you have that sort of test tube-like round object that he was just pointing out, which is the containment vessel. And the containment vessel was supposed to be sort of the last fortress of defense to protect people from radiation. However, it seems that there has been damage to the containment vessel because no matter how much water you pump in, it keeps not filling up.
います。
So, as you can see from how the professor has pointed, at the bottom of the smaller pressure vessel and at the bottom of the larger containment vessel, TEPCO believes that there are lumps of melted fuel, and they have this idea that they are somehow going to insert something from the top of the pressure vessel, go through all the way down to the bottom of the containment vessel, and pluck out all of these lumps of melted fuels. However, if they were simply to try to remove the top of the pressure vessel in a dry state and put something inside, that means the moment they opened it up, there would be a huge amount of radioactive materials that would be emitted into the air. Nobody could go even close. So how is TEPCO going to deal with this situation? They're saying that the first step they will take is to somehow plug the holes in the containment vessel, the larger vessel. Obviously, there must be some damage. So once they are able to repair the sides of the containment vessel, then they will fill it with water. And after the containment vessel has been flooded with water, then they will insert some equipment from above and go through the pressure vessel and also go all the way down to the bottom of the containment vessel and pluck the spent fuel, which they insist is all in a lump. And the terminology that, the description that the professor is using is, it looks like a dumpling. It's all together in a mass.
何よりもきちっ
But I believe that this plan that has been presented is simply impossible to realize. The reason for this is that, first of all, the containment vessel does have holes. We don't even have the technology or ability now to even, first of all, determine where the holes are. And even if we were able to determine where the holes are, how can we possibly repair them? We do not have the means to do so, I believe.
私は思い
I also think that if hypothetically one were able to repair the sides of the containment vessel and successfully fill it with water, then even if you were to try to plug out the melted fuel from above, I think the fundamental sort of assumption of TEPCO and the government that the melted fuel is sitting at the bottom in a nice little lump, like a dumpling shape, I think that is impossible. It's an impossible proposition. What I'm trying to say is that although this picture looks like a neat little situation where all of the spent fuel is put very nicely into two little lumps, I think when one considers the severity of the accident that occurred and all of the explosions and shaking and et cetera and damage that occurred, I cannot imagine that all of the every bit of that melted fuel will be sitting nicely in one little lump, but rather they will have spread all over the place. And it's also possible not only will they have spread horizontally, it could be that some of the spent fuel could actually have gone through the floor of the containment vessel as well. What I've just described is very, very logical for anyone who understands nuclear engineering or nuclear energy. And in recent months, it has come to the understanding of the general public. In fact, this is a copy of a local Fukushima newspaper which printed an article about what I just described. Instead of the government or TEPCO's previous explanation of the melted fuel being in one dumpling nice shape, rather it shows that probably they're spread all over the place.